from an AARP perspective, why this was important for us. So for those of you who are not familiar with AARP, at AARP, we're focused on empowering older adults to live how they want to as they age. And we do that through a few things. So we do consumer information education. We also have programs in 53 states and territories, as well as virtually, especially now in the COVID world. We also do a lot of work around advocacy and policy, both at the national level, but also at the state level, and also internationally for some topics. And then we also have partnerships with industry, and we find it important to really scale solutions for older adults by moving the marketplace and helping them to understand the importance and the power of the 50 plus consumer. So with that mission in mind, one of the most important things that we do is to understand the needs and the wants and the attitudes and behaviors of older adults, so that we can do a better job of creating solutions for them, but also so that we can help those that we partner with in industry or in government to understand those issues and those insights as well. So tied into that is a critical role around data advocacy for groups, especially for the 50 plus, and also for groups who may be underrepresented from a data standpoint as well, so that we see this data advocacy as part of our social mission. And so with all of that in mind, and to that end, we've been working, and John and his team especially have been working for several years on developing best-in-class tools to gather data on older adults, and understanding that, you know, when you're trying to address older adults, there may be different barriers to reaching them, different methodologies you may need to keep in mind. And so we really needed to step up our game in doing that. We've done work with NORC for many years, and have always really respected the level of quality and also their mission. And so in building a probability panel, we found this perfect alignment in a partnership with NORC. So we are both focused on mission-driven work. We both recognize that we needed to develop something that wasn't just for AARP, wasn't just for NORC, was really available to everyone, so that everybody had access to high quality data and information on older adults. So, you know, to put it succinctly and sum it up, you know, we really understand collectively, AARP and NORC, that if we're gonna move the needle at scale to create opportunities for older adults to have better products and services and policies and information to really best serve them, that we needed to step up and change the landscape around data and information for other organizations, for-profit, nonprofit, government, and really change their availability of really amazing high quality data for older adults. So we believe the solution is Foresight 50 plus, and we're excited to be able to tell you more about that today.
From our standpoint, one of the exciting things about Foresight 50 plus is we really see it as an industry disruptor. Like, you know, as we've done research, you know, years and years, we've done research, and we've really found that a lot of sample sources, lists, whatever, to get to that 50 plus population it's just skewed. It provides kind of a skewed look at what that 50 plus population looks like, what they think, what they experience. And so again, with everything that's gone in the Foresight 50 plus, we see that it really brings a higher level of accuracy and really certainty to the data and the results that we get. And that really boils down to kind of four big components that go into Foresight 50 plus. One of those is size. You can't do surveys if you don't have people. So you absolutely have to have a good size panel to really execute on research. But it's not simply about how many people you have, how many panelists you have. We see lots of numbers thrown around. That it's really about where they came from and how you got them. That's what really defines how representative that panel is or your sample is for your study. And the great thing about Foresight 50 plus, it has starts with a great frame, right? A great sampling frame. So 97% of all households in the US are covered. And then there's this tenacious recruiting methodology that really goes above and beyond. So it's mail, it's phone, it's face-to-face for non-response follow-up, So it's really making sure that everyone gets an opportunity, everyone's sample gets an opportunity to be included. And that's, again, what really allows Foresight 50 Plus to say it is representative of the 50 plus population. Moving on from there is accuracy. Obviously, all of that sets it up. You have this great panel, but accuracy also involves execution. So it's about fielding. It's about you're pulling your samples. It's about the fielding of it. It's about the panel management and retention. It's about the weighting on the back end. So all of that, we rely on NORC, their experience, just the scientific rigor they bring. It really allows that accuracy to be drawn out of the panel. And the final one is kind of has been alluded to through all of this is sort of the expertise, right? From everything Allison said about the voice that AARP has always had for the 50 plus population. Just we've been there, we've been speaking out, being a fierce defender of them just for years and years. And then we have NORC, who just, again, proven scientific rigor, excellence in what they do. And that is kind of what houses and pulls all of this together to allow Foresight 50 Plus, in our opinion, just to be a fantastic resource out there in the industry and unlike anything else that's out there.
The problem at hand generally is the one many of us are very familiar with and perhaps too familiar with, and that is the big cost-quality trade-off. Many of us commission surveys, particularly in the consumer market research industry, where there are limited budgets, but nonetheless, accuracy in the results are absolutely critical in order to make informed business decisions, informed marketing decisions, to inform C-suite strategies. And the industry, by and large, uses the non-probability samples, which I'll be talking about today, and I might be calling them opt or non-probability, and I do mean the same thing. But we know that there are some sacrifices that are made by using the less expensive, less scientifically rigorous sample source of opt-in respondents. And the research has shown this over and over again. I'm reminded actually of the research done in the early 2000s by Professor Krosnick and his colleagues at Stanford University, comparing the old Harris online polls, for those of you who remember the early Harris panel, to the non-probability samples. And those findings have been replicated many times, that the non-probability samples tend to be less accurate than the probability samples. Then I'd like to talk a little bit here on this slide coming up about the non-probability samples and where they come from and some of the disadvantages. And I'm not covering any particularly new novel ground here for those of you who've been in this space for a while. We do know that the non-probability samples, by definition, are going to exclude that fraction of the US population that is offline or barely online, which I think is a often under-discussed complication of using non-probability samples. It's not just the exclusion or failure to include the non-web population, but it's the failure to include those who just aren't online very often as well. And conversely, there is the overrepresentation of individuals who simply like taking surveys, which may seem counterintuitive that that is a sizable fraction of the US population, but nonetheless, it is the case that the samples that are acquired through the non-probability sources tend to be more survey friendly and opinionated. Our results show they tend to be more knowledgeable about different topics. So there's different skews in the data that John Fries mentioned earlier that we see. I did just want to point out one other part here, which may not be so obvious, is that since Foresight 50 Plus is focused on the age 50 and older population, mode of data collection matters a lot for the actual administration of the surveys. Our data shows that over 3 out of 10 Foresight 50 Plus panel members actually prefer the telephone mode of data collection for participating in the actual studies that we do for our customers and we do for ourselves. So the non-probability samples have no answer to that. They don't. But in using Foresight 50 Plus, we're able to use a mixed mode data collection to make sure that we provide adequate sample coverage for the entire population, age 50 and older. So how do we actually do this? John mentioned earlier that we do a tremendous amount of refusal conversion. I think the word was tenacious, which I will absolutely adopt going forward. I think that was a fantastic description for what NORC actually does in terms of what many of us who do the kind of work I do daily, in terms of working the sample. You know, we work the sample, meaning that we leave no stone unturned in how we contact the households and attempt to convert them. And I'll emphasize the final phase there, which is the face-to-face recruitment. We had to take a year off last year because of COVID, as everyone recognizes the situation in the country here. And most of this year has not permitted NORC to do the face-to-face recruitment of the sample, which is the distinguishing feature of AmeriSpeak, as well as Foresight 50+ in terms of improving sample representation, in terms of giving us the respectable AARP response rate that we seek. But I have good news that we're back in the field the last month. As of the 3rd week of September, we've been engaged in our face-to-face recruitment again. We've put protocols in place to assure the safety of our field interviewers that are visiting the homes. We're doing a lot of on the doorstep interviewing right now, and we'll be continuing that through the holidays and into next year in an attempt to make up for lost time because of the pandemic. And on the next slide, if we go there, I want to just show you just a little bit more under the hood, what's really going on here. We have essentially year in, year out, a subsample routine where we do the initial recruitment using the lesser expensive forms of contacting the households, using mail-outs, a series of mail-outs, also doing professional telephone interviewer call-outs to these households. But once that's exhausted, we do a subsample routine where we are oversampling households likely to be Hispanic, households likely to be African American, and households likely to be low income. And we have a sophisticated approach using consumer auxiliary data for giving us predictive information on household composition that allows us to target and invest in those segments for the face-to-face, door-to-door recruitment that we do. And you can see it in the results. We actually improve our sample representation a great deal, particularly for Hispanic and African American populations in the US, and harder to reach groups, particularly in the non-metropolitan areas and lower income areas and young adults. So we see those real benefits from this investment, and we think it continues to make sense to invest in the face-to-face recruitment methodology.